Okay, so let's start building our cover. And the only thing we want to put on here is the logo and one big visual. The first page is not about getting information squeezed in it. The first page is about making a dynamic entrance, getting them to pick up the brochure. So you want to only put what you have to on the cover. You want more drama and you want scale. So we've got this logo. Now we can probably fit this right to the edge of this column. Perfect. Let me show you another way to size this like that. Let's say that you have the logo here and you set it so that it's right on your margin, right? And remember, it's not the box or container that's on the margin, it's the type, right? But you want this to go over right to this column. You can drag it till you get over there, or you can come up to here, and I've got mine workspace set as Essentials Classic, which gives me this toolbar at the top. And do you see these empty squares? If you use, this is a reference point, if you put your reference point at the top left, that means the part of this logo that's not going to change. It's going to size it from that corner, which is perfectly on the margin, right? So now if we just click up, it just keeps going out from that point until we get right to our column. So there we go. And we can move that maybe one more click. There we go. Okay, so that's an easy way to kind of size things to fit, especially a layout like this. And we want to make sure we haven't gone too large. Nope, it's still 213. And remember, when you look at your effective PPI, if you ever see two numbers, that means that it's non-proportionally scaled. So that means you have to get back into the image, go up here and look. See, mine's 33.77 on both. And I know it's proportionally scaled because the effective PPI is only one number. Now we just want to put the chair. Now this chair, since I know that I only want this chair to occupy this amount of space, it's actually easier to set the image box there first and then place the chair in there. Now I can set the reference point to the center and do the same thing. I can just keep making the image larger, do you see how I'm keeping an eye on my links panel and watching that number? I'm going to go as big with this chair as I can and still have 200 PPI because I want the drama. There we go. There I am at 200. Now I can make this image box fit in here. It's always good to kind of see your page, so keep your image box and your text boxes as small as they need to be. Now this has got a reflection, so that needs to stay there, and this needs to go about like that. I can also take this Knoll logo and put it in front of this by just going to Object, Arrange, Bring to Front. So now no matter how big this chair gets, the Knoll logo will always be in front of it. So now I'm going to look at this from this point of view and start placing this. So I think looking at this, that chair could go smaller. I'm glad I can make this big, but let's go smaller. So same thing, I'm going to keep the reference point in the center, and I'm just going to tap this down until it looks right. Now if that reflection bleeds off of there, and I think I will have it bleed off of there, that means it has to go to the bleed. So let's look and see if we've actually been able to do that. Yes, that's the only side that bleeds. That once that reflection goes off, they want it going to the bleed mark, which it does. So again, I'm going to bring in that box so I can kind of see things. And that looks pretty good. I like the way the space interacts. You could make it a little smaller if you wanted. And same thing, just tap it down from here, keeping the reference point. But I do kind of like the slight overlap of these two. Okay, let's start constructing our first spread. So according to our text box, we have a name. This is the designer name. So I'll grab that, delete it so that I can keep track of where things are and what's been used. And I'm going to put that designer's name in there. And then this chair, the design information for the chair we're going to show needs to go somewhere here. So I'll put that there. And that's it for this page. So I'm just going to do one page at a time. So I know that I want to feature the designer's name consistently in this brochure. So I'm going to style this and give it a style sheet. We know that we're going to use that Avant-Garde Pro. And I'd like to make this stand out a little bit, but not too big. So I'm going to make this all caps. And I'm going to make it, let's try 16 point. And then I'll make it bold. And let's track it way out to kind of match what we did down here, but a bigger version of it. So that looks pretty good. All your copy is not going to go to the column. that's just the way it is. So on this one, I'm just going to line it up right to the margins. I can always move it, and when I do move it, I can keep columns in mind. Like maybe I want to start it at the second column, maybe I want to start it at the third. But right now I'm going to put it in the corner because I know I've got to fit an image in here. And I'm going to call that style the designer name. I've got another piece of copy here to style, and that is the name of the product. So these ones I want to be a little bit smaller, but I'm still going to use our typeface. We're going to use this throughout the whole brochure, this Avant-Garde Pro. And this one I'm going to make a little smaller. I've already used all caps a lot, so I'm not going to use all caps on this. And in fact, for right now, I'm going to try it just at medium. And then I'm going to make a style sheet for that. And that one I'm going to call product name. Now I just have to put the actual Aran chair on here. I think I'll put the image box first, and I'll put it behind this since I want the name to come out ahead of it. So I'll put arrange, send to back. I want this chair to be in the back, and I want it to fit approximately that space. So then I find my chair. Now I can go to object, fitting, fit content. And then this is where I'll start from. So I'll go to the image itself, I'll put my reference point on the center, and I'll just keep clicking it out with my links panel open because I can only make this 200. No matter how much I want it to take the whole page, I've only got what I've got here. So when I bring it to 200, it looks about like that. I'm going to make my image box way bigger. This is obviously too big. So I'm going to center this by centering the chair right in that center column, and then I'm just going to begin to knock it down. Now I know I have enough PPI. Now I'm looking for kind of a visual rhythm to this. I want some space, but I want this also to be dramatic. The shadows, I'm going to have to pull this down so that the shadows kind of go off softly there. And that looks pretty good. So now this bit of copy that describes the chair, I'm able to set that right on this column, which is really nice. This chair is perfectly centered. This and the copy at the bottom are on the left side. And you can see the freedom that it gives you when you have your margins set up in a way where it's going to give you a certain look. It allows you to kind of randomly choose where things go and create a certain rhythm. So I think this page looks really good. Let's go over to our page on the right. On this right side, we have to put several things. We have a quote from a designer, and then we have body copy. So let's put those in separate boxes. So I'm going to put this quote over here, and we'll wait to style that. And then I'm going to grab this big chunk of copy, and that I'm going to set right on this second column, and I'll make it a 2-column box. So let's style our body copy that we'll be using throughout. So we're going to use the same typeface, of course. And let's go a little smaller so that we can put lots of leading. 120 is the minimal amount of leading in copy when it's this size, between 9 and 14 point. You want to make sure you have enough leading that you don't get any crashing ascenders and descenders. But you can also go way out. So I'm going to actually put this at 18, which is obviously 180%. And that's okay too, because in this brochure there's lots of white space. I'm going to bring this down lower. About like that. I'm going to go ahead and try to make this justified also, because that kind of speaks to this high design setup. So now you'll see that there are some bad breaks, like that one, exception, and then all. Let's change the settings in this style sheet before we start making manual breaks that take a lot of time. So I'm going to make a new style sheet, and I'm going to call this body. And under justification, this is the best way to automatically fix your copy. And you still might have to go into it, but this does a pretty good job. So you see the word spacing goes from 80% to 133%. That's a huge gap. That's 53% difference, and that's why you get those waves. So if you move this to 90, and I put this at like 110, might have to go 120, but we'll try that. Letter spacing, I'm going to let it go -5% to 5%. That means the spacing in between the letters. Now we want that to be able to move, otherwise it creates those rivers of space. Glyph scaling, you really can only do what the eye won't pick up, which is 99 or 101. And you don't have to do that, but that just kind of tells you if it makes for a better break, it will take a tiny little bit percent off, 1%, which no one will ever be able to see. And you say, okay to that. Now when we apply this, you'll see it still has a couple of bad breaks. So let's go back into that body copy again, and let's look at our hyphenations. I only want 2 hyphens per paragraph because I don't want to deal with trying to fix more than 2. So let's see if that fixed it. It still didn't fix exceptional. So that means I'm going to have to do it myself. So I'm going to grab this, I'm going to go to my properties panel, and I'm just going to take that down just a tiny bit. -10, -20, which isn't ideal, but it makes it read much better. So now I'm going to go down here, pressure points, support. Those are kind of hard to fix because they're quite a bit more space. Now we have to style this quote. So I think the quotes can be like the chair image in that they can change. We don't want this to all be the same on every spread. So some of these quotes from the designers can be large and some can be small. This one I'm going to make a little smaller because there's a larger picture of him. So the quote in this case, I'm going to go to 12/14, but I'm going to make this bold. So I'm not going to make it big, but I'm going to give it some weight. And I don't want to put in all that leading like I did here because I want this quote to hang together. And so now I'll try to line it up on a column. Let's try and see if we can put it right there. Grateful, not loving that break. Maybe if we bring this over here. There we go. And then I can handbrake people. There we go. And by handbrake, I mean you hit Shift Return so that it doesn't make a hard break and start a new paragraph. Okay, so those are sitting there nicely, but now I still have to put the image of the designer, which is another thing that you can play around with as far as the size. So let's just see what would happen if we had this go maybe 4 columns across. That actually looks pretty good. It's a little bit interesting or weird, I'm not sure, that his actual body sits right over the copy, so that might be kind of cool. Let's see what our links panel tells us about this one. Oh yeah, we have 321, so we could make this bigger or smaller. Let's just see how it looks. Maybe we want him like that, or maybe we could go off center. That might be a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to make his shirt end right at the article and go like that. So now you can see when we don't have the column showing how there's a certain rhythm to these pages just because we're following that 5-column grid. The copy sits on there, the image sits on there, the quote, the chair is centered in the grid, this piece of information, and then this lines up with the margin. Okay, so we're going to do one more spread together, and then you're going to do one on your own. So let's grab this copy and bring it down here so we can start our 3rd spread. On this one, I know that I want to introduce a new color. And so the best way I can do that is actually make it a swatch. That way I can use it different ways as strokes and such. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to make a new color swatch. And this is basically just a yellow. It's got 0 cyan, 10% magenta, 100 yellow, and 0 black. And I want to make a box on this left side that's going to cover the entire page because I want to break this up. The page before was all white with some black type. The cover has red and some wood. So this page needs to pop or it's going to be too boring, the same thing on every page. So I'm going to create a box all the way to the bleed, but on this side of the page, it goes just to the edge of the page. I'm going to make that solid yellow, and then I'm going to lock it so I don't have to worry about it. And do you see how our parent page type still sits on top of that? That's because we put it on that type layer, on that top layer. And so that's why we do that. We want to make sure that it doesn't get buried because you might not even notice. So now we have our yellow background, and I'm going to put the quote on this. So I'm going to set this type box right here, put in the type. I'm going to style this as our avant-garde. I'm going to go bold on this, and I want to see how large I can get it. So let's go, I'm going to use the Shift command and just keep clicking until it starts to look kind of interesting. The challenge here is going to be the words and the way they break. So that actually is looking pretty good. I want to make sure that expressing is all on one line though. So let's just take a little bit. I can go about -20 and that's it. So let me make this text box all the way out to the margin and just a hair more. So now I'm not having problems with that. So let's keep going. We're at 50. Let's see if we can go 52, 62, no, 50. We just need to get that expressed. There it is. So 52 is about it. Could try one more. I'm going to put a soft break on elegant ways, and that helps. So now let's see if we can go a little bit more. I want to get this as big as I can with it sitting right on that margin. And that's about it. So 54. Right now my leading is automatic. That's why it's in those parentheses. It's 64.8. Let's see if that is good. We could take some of that out, but I'm not going to because I do want to use most of this page with that quote, so I don't want to squish it up into the top. So that looks good. Now the other thing I want to do is put the person's name, the designer name. So I'm going to grab Marcel Brewer. I'm going to make a little type box for that. And now I've already got a style sheet, thankfully, for that. So I just go to my paragraphs, and it is designer name. And I'm going to just put that kind of below the quote. I'm going to set it right on this column. So his name is both announcing him as the designer for this page, but also giving context for the quote. Let's look at that before we go on. Always look at things this way so you can line things up on margins and columns. But to really decide if this is working, you need to preview. And I can tell already that this type is spaced out too much. Do you see all the space between the B and the A and all this? So this one that I made tighter to make it fit, that's actually looks good, and that's, I think it's -20. Yeah, so let's make this whole quote -20 tracking. And I'm going to break this so it reads a little bit better also. I might have to take some space out of this. Okay, so let's look at that again. Much better. I don't mind that there's extra leading in this. This is more leading than I would normally use. I don't mind that, but I don't like to see the spacing in between the letters and in between the lines. The whole thing just starts to look like alphabet soup. So that page looks good. We've got our parent page element at the bottom, kind of anchoring it. Now let's go to this page on the right. So to do this right side, we're going to look at what we've got here. We've got the credit for the chair that we're going to show, and then we have the body copy. So let's start with this body copy. It's likely to be a 2-column text box just because that's a really nice format, but I don't know where I'm going to put it. So of course the first thing I'm going to do is make this my body copy. Now this one has several paragraphs in it. So do you see this, the chair's unique design and the Wassley chair? So that means I need to put some space after or indents. So I'm going to try space after. That makes more sense to me. So I'll just kind of visually make it work and then redefine. So I'm going to go with just the slightest bit, 0.0625, and see if that'll do the trick. And then I'm going to redefine that style. Let's move this in the corner. And because it's justified, it really sits nicely on the column and kind of makes a column itself. And I have movement here, but that's a pretty big word. It's about 1/3 of the width of the paragraph, so that's probably okay. Manufacture is another large word. I don't see too many hyphens. There are 2 in that paragraph. Oh, there are 3 in that paragraph. So that's a problem. We got to get rid of one of those. So let's see what we can do. I know I can't fit construction there. Furniture design. Probably the only way to fix this is to take it to 3 columns. Now we don't have any hyphens. That's because the more narrow your column is, the more hyphens you're going to have. It's just got more breaking to do. So I'll leave that there and see if we can get away with that. And then I'm going to put the chair, and this will go over here somewhere. I'm going to make I'm going to change it up. I'm making the quote large, and I'm going to make the chair small. And I actually want to make the chair 2 columns. So I'm going to set the leg of that chair right there. And then remember how we can use the reference point. So I know I want to size it off to the left. I want to keep that leg right there. So I'm going to make my reference point the right hand side or lower right, and then just gradually click that up. I'm going to see what happens when I get that over to about the 2nd column. And of course, open your links panel. I'm at 315, so I can still keep going. And it moved a little bit. Now I could leave it like that and the shadow could hit the column, or I could keep going and see if I can get the other leg to hit the 2nd column. And it looks like we're going to be able to do that. So there we go. Now it's drifted a little bit, so I got to move it in. Let's keep sizing it. Getting perilously close to my maximum, But there it is. So I've got it at 224, so I could probably do one more click. There we go, perfect. And then I'm going to set this behind so that none of the text gets blocked. So object arrange, send it back. And I'm going to move this chair in here, and I'm going to make that image box smaller so that it doesn't look completely out of control. You want to keep these as neat as possible. It's a little bit easier to work around. So now that text coming right up close to that may work or it may not. Let's put the picture of our designer in. This is our cigarette smoking Marcel Brewer. I'm going to put him on 2 columns and set him all the way to the bottom and see if that helps us a little bit gain some space. The only other thing I need to put in is the name information on this chair, which is right here. It's the Wassily chair. He named it that because he was friends with Wassily Kandinsky, the Russian artist, and he really loved the chair, so he partially named it after him. People get confused and think that Kandinsky designed this, but of course it's not. And then we have a style sheet for that, thankfully. Product name. So now we can tuck that in somewhere on that column. Always try to do the column if you possibly can. And it looks like we can set it right on that last column. Perfect. Okay, so now we have everything on this page that we need. Let's go and look at it in preview mode. This block of copy is too close to the same shape as this chair. So I'm going to go in favor of design and take a hit for readability by having 3 hyphens in that one paragraph, because I think this is going to look a lot better to line this up with him and get it out of the way of the chair. Much better. So if you wanted to, of course, you can move this down closer to him, but I actually think it's kind of interesting to have that up high on our margin. For the last spread, let's bring the text over. This is what we've got, spread 3. I'm going to bring over this body copy to our 3rd spread. On the 3rd spread, you're going to lay it out yourself, and this is what has to go in here, same as the other one. There's a quote, there is a photo of a chair, photo of a designer, and name of the designer, and text. So I've given you the image for these. This spread is about the designer Harry Bertoia, and this is the chair he designed. So you're going to put in that image, and then you're going to put an image of him. The only thing you're limited by is the PPI and your column layout. So if you open up the PPI on this, you can see you've got a lot of room with him. He's at 533, so you could, holding your shift and command, size him out. That's 165. I like to kind of see what's the largest I could do of this if I wanted to. And I don't know that I want to show him really large, but there's as large as I can show him. Remember, we can go into Photoshop and goose it by about 20%, but that's about it. These chairs, on the other hand, these are 333, so let's see what happens when we take these to their limit. How big do these get? Okay, so that's the maximum size that the chair and the photo of the designer can be, and then you still have to work in the quote, the name for this chair, the name for the designer, and the body copy. And that all needs to conform to your style sheets and your column layouts, but that's it. If you want to use color, you can use either the red of the Knoll logo, which you can just sample it with the eyedropper. You can use that red and then add it to your swatches. So you have this yellow, and you have this red, and you have black and white. Following the column layout, following the style sheets, I want you to lay out this last spread in a way that's the same but different. In a way that follows the cadence but doesn't let you get bored. That should be interesting. Make sure you don't have your image distorted, and make sure that it is at least 200 ppi. Now on this back spread, I actually don't want 5 columns, and you can do this. You can change your column layout within a brochure or a magazine or book. So on this particular back page, I only want 3 because I have less things to put in here that are going to conform to that. I'm going to leave my same gutter, same margin, and I'm going to place the Knoll logo in the corner. I'm going to try to get this and the whole address, in fact, to fit into this one column. So I'll set this again right on the margin, put the reference point of the upper left, and just make it larger until it hits the edge of that first column. Perfect. And then I have an address to put in there that you're going to get from the text box, Park Avenue. This I'm going to make into body copy, but you can see that it's justified, right? So we want to make an exception to that and make it flush left. And then I want to go to preview to make sure those are working together, and they're not. I want to copy the space between these down here, and I probably don't want quite so much leading in between an address because I actually want this to hold together pretty well. So that's going to be 14. And that's an exception to that body copy. I don't want to make it a new style sheet because this address is only going to appear one time, so I'll just leave it like that. And then you're going to make image boxes at about 4 inches. So I'm going to drag a guide from the ruler at the top to 4 inches, and I'll come down here. I want this to be just above that text from our parent page, and I'm just going to make 3 image boxes. So one goes here. Once you have those 3 in, I want you to duplicate them. We'll take all 3 holding the shift key, again the option and shift, and bring them down. Now start moving things. So this one we want to be shorter. This one we want to go to here. And this one we want to be a square shape. So the width is 2.4167. So I'm going to make this the same, 2.1467. That's our center text box. So I'm going to make that black just so I can kind of keep track of that one. And then I'm going to drag this box down to that line. Remember the line we made? Take that one down to there. I'm going to make another box here at the bottom. Hold the option key. And do you see how my smart guides are showing me the exact spacing above and below that black box? And then I'll just bring this down. Now in this last column I have to get 3 images. So I'm going to bring this one up, my smart guides, but it doesn't seem to be. We'll check that later. I'll take this one up a little bit, and then I'm going to hold the option key, and I want to make one more box. Hold shift so it stays in place, and maybe this box will be okay. So now I can real quickly put in all my images by going to place, and I can grab all of the images at once and just start plopping them in. So I'll put that one in there. I'll put this one over here, here. Now these are all at different croppings, but I can also select them at the same time by holding the shift key, clicking on each of these, go to object, fitting, and let's fill the frame. It's okay if it gets cropped, but we want it to fill the frame. Now you can start going in and testing these to see how much room you have. So there's the whole picture in there. This one I have, it's at 496, so I can definitely come a little closer. Actually, all of these look pretty good. This one may be a little closer, 391, so I can bring that out a little bit. Okay, so now I have all my images in. Now I just need to put the text, which is, these are the people who make Knoll. I'm going to grab that, delete it, and I'm going to go ahead and put it in this black box. There's no reason why we can't do that. Just by clicking on it, it becomes a black box, a text box. I'll grab that text and start styling it. And in fact, the first thing I'm going to see is if maybe I can use something that I've used, one of the style sheets. So I'm going to make it white, and I'm going to put it in the center. And I also want to put it in the center of the box, so I'm going to go to text frame options and put it aligned center. And then you can see that this is the text that I did the designer name in, which isn't really working as well for this because it's tracked out too much. So I'm going to take it back down to like 5, and then I'm going to add a little bit of leading to it. These are the people who make Knoll. And I think that Knoll, I don't want to be all capped because their logo isn't like that. So I'm going to say Knoll, and I'm going to make that one into the red that I have for Knoll, my color from their logo. Make it larger, tighten it up, and there you go. The period actually should probably also be that red. And there you go, there's the back. Now let's see why it's not, we want to make sure that our space in between is even. So the best way to do this on some of these, the guides are helping us out. The smart guides helps you out and tells you, but on some of it, it doesn't. So whenever there's a chance to check the space in between things, I'll just make a box. And we'll make this red. And you just want to make sure that the spacing's the same on all of them. So this one looks like it's just a little bit larger than that other one. So we'll go down. This one too. And I think that should do it. Now we'll look and see how it's reading. I think that's reading really well. All right, so that's it. That's all you need to do is finish this spread. You've got the copy, you've got everything in the text box. You just have to use it, finish that one out. And then what I want you to hand in on this is just the InDesign file. So you're going to save as, and it's really important. You guys have been doing a zip of a compression of your files, but the InDesign file that sits within there is not named, which means if you send your trifold brochure, for example, to a printer and they unstuff it and then they open the InDesign file, it's not going to say whose it is. On this one, you're going to follow that same donvito.knoll.brochure. And then if you revise this, never send out a revised file with the same name, because I guarantee you someone will mistake it. So you want to say V2 or round 2, R2, something that says this is not the original file. It's really important. If files get mixed up and printed, you could lose clients, a lot of money. Okay, so you're just going to save that. I have all these images, so I don't need you to package it. And what I'm looking for, I want to see that you've set up the columns. I want to see your master pages or your parent page is set up. I want to see that you followed the column and the style sheets throughout, but changed it up a little bit. So this spread should not look exactly like the second spread or the first spread. So maybe the chair is on the left now, since this chair was on the right. Maybe it's large. You can only go as large as that. Maybe it sits in the corner on its own. Maybe the copy is with it. Who knows? But you've got to kind of establish that cadence while sticking to all the style sheets. And then that's it. You will just send me this InDesign file and you'll be good to go.